Now, there are a number of important things that we need to note when using relative clauses with who and that. Let's look at the first thing that we should note. Notice that it is possible to leave out the relative clause and still have a complete sentence. So, the woman who we saw today looked very strange. You can see the relative clause with who, but if we delete that relative clause, we still have a good sentence. The woman looked very strange. But can you see the difference between the two sentences? Sentence 1 is identifying which woman. It's making the meaning much, much clearer. So that's why we use relative clauses, to enhance meaning, to make everything much, much clearer. So even though we can delete it, it's better to have it in the sentence. Here's just another example of deleting a relative clause. The red Ferrari that was speeding down the road today was beautiful. So if we delete that relative clause, the sentence becomes, the red Ferrari was beautiful. But again, the second sentence is lacking some meaning. Which red Ferrari am I talking about? So the relative clause identifies which one I'm talking about. Here's the next thing that you need to note. The type of relative clause that we are studying in this unit is needed to define things. Look at this example. The man was so funny. So a relative clause could be used here to say more about the man, to define him, to explain which man I'm talking about. So the relative clause I could add is a who relative clause. Look at the sentence with the relative clause. The man who was at the party last night was so funny. Now you can see there's much more meaning and we know exactly which man I'm talking about. Let's look at another example for things this time using a that relative clause. So look at the example. The wine was really flavoursome. But what wine am I talking about? If I want to give more information and define the wine, I can use a relative clause. So I can say, the wine that we drank at the wedding was really flavoursome. Now the sentence has much more meaning. So I hope that's helped you understand relative clauses much, much better. Use them in your speaking to really define things and people. Move on to the practice exercises next and make sure you download the MP3s so that you can train your brain to master relative clauses. See you in the next lecture.